edition of the glass making. We're going to be doing, I am going to be making a cobalt blue luster teardrop vase for you during this morning demonstration. And so the pipes are heated up. I'm going to go ahead and pick up a piece of cobalt blue, and we'll go from there. So,
all right.
Glad you're with us.
Sounds great. All right. And as Foster mentioned, the theme for today is the red, white, and blue. So we got a lot of our pieces here on display, and that little green interloper free piece that we'll be giving away during the Facebook video in another half hour or so. So if you want to see who gets the green, stick around for the Facebook. Anyway, we'll be making red, white, and blue stuff, and Foster's kicking it off with the blue vase. So welcome, Liz, from Germantown. Sure is hot there, sure is hot here. But at the Art of Fire, hot stuff rules, right, Foster?
There you are.
Okie doke.
You bet. Hot glass moves and cold glass don't.
Right, there ain't no cold glass in here today, is there?
No, sir.
Well, relatively speaking, but for us glass blowers, cold takes place at about 1600 degrees.
That's correct.
That's the cold glass.
Yeah.
Okay, so Foster has picked up a piece of cobalt blue. It's picked that up out of the annealer. It was preheated to around 900 degrees, but now he's melting it even further. And once he gets that up to temperature, which will be probably in a range of about 2000 or so, it'll be all soft and gooey, and he'll be able to shape it on his marver. So he'll be bringing that over here. That glory hole runs at about 2000 or 2100 degrees. It's for reheating the glass primarily. Doesn't burr off a little bit, and now he'll roll the iron on the marver, and you'll see that the glass is in contact with the metal table. That shapes it, gives it a little bit of a conical shape. Then when he taps the end of it, that cools the very end of it, the tip, if you will. Now, it's all in a uniform shape, but watch what happens when he traps air in the blowpipe. It starts to expand, it rounds out some, and that's our evidence that there's an air bubble inside the glass. He'll roll it on the marver once more just to straighten it out a little bit, change the shape, and now it's a process of cooling. So reason for cooling it is, if he were to gather right away, the extreme heat of the furnace would cause the bubble to shrink up inside that blue. And though he could certainly do it, he'd have to start all over. Well, good morning, Steve Ellis from England. Glad to have you with us. Got Liz and Steve, and we got somebody else out there as yet unidentified. Speak up, let us know your name. Just kidding around. Well, welcome all of you. So we'll say it again, Foster is going to make a vase in cobalt blue with a luster finish. And we'll explain that as we go along. Right now he's stepping over to our furnace, which holds about 450 pounds of molten glass. And it's clear glass. We melt clear glass so that we can add a lot of different colors to it. We could have melted cobalt blue glass, but then 450 pounds of cobalt blue would take us probably a week or two to work our way through. So now he's got that cobalt blue covered with a layer of clear. It went into the glory hole with it to kind of equalize the heat a little bit. Remember that the cobalt blue he'd allowed to cool before he gathered, so now he'd like a nice uniform temperature throughout. We don't have thermometers or laser sensors or anything for that, so we kind of look at the color. And you can see a nice uniform glow in that, and that lets Foster know that the glass is all the same temperature. He'll use the cherry wood block to shape it. That cup that's on an end of the handle, that's what we call the block, and it's cut from green wood. Do we keep the 450 pounds of glass in the furnace going 24/7? Yes, we do, Steve.
Yeah.
Not only 24/7, but 365 if we're lucky, because we don't want to shut it down. Yeah, so that baby runs year-round. It's powered by propane and pressurized air. And the only times it comes down is if we have to do some maintenance. And part of the maintenance procedure is really interesting. It takes about 10 days to get it down from 2,000 degrees to room temperature to work on it. And the reason for that is the ceramic lining of the furnace. If we were to allow it to crash quickly to room temperature, the ceramic lining would crack and we'd have to replace it. It also takes about 8 to 10 days to bring it back up to operating temperature. And believe it or not, sometimes when we've completed our repairs and started in the reheating process, we start out with a simple light bulb inside the chamber. And sometimes we use a little device that's used for igniting charcoal. It looks like a little oven burner. So we baby that thing and bring the temperatures up gradually. And right now Foster's getting ready to cool the pipe, except that the pump on the pipe cooler is not cooperating. So we'll get Todd or Josh over here in a minute to help him out on that. Or Bruce will hold the camera and see if he can do it. All right, let me give that a shot.
Yeah.
Okay, so Foster's going to go reheat the glass, and we're going to watch it from over here while I clatter around trying to get the pump to work.
Bruce, don't worry about it.
Okay. All right, the man says don't worry about it, so we won't worry. All righty. So he's reheating that glass right now, took it out for a couple moments there. And what he's going to do now is equalize temperatures throughout. And well, good afternoon from Tommy's workshop. Tommy and Steve, we got more folks from the UK here than we do from the US of A. All righty. Okay, so Foster's reheating the glass to get it all to a uniform temperature throughout, and that'll allow it to blow out easier and also shape better. So once again with the cherry wood block, this one's a little larger because he's got more glass. The block does a couple things. Number one, it cools the outside so it doesn't move as much. It gives us a uniform shape, a nice symmetrical shape. And the shapes are very important when we blow the glass. He's trapped air with his finger in the blowpipe, and now the bubble with the blue is moving out uniformly throughout. If he hadn't made a nice symmetrical shape with that glass, the bubble wouldn't have blown out so nicely. He's going to cool it a little bit more. This will help with just cooling it down. He'll be getting another gather in a few moments. And while he's waiting on that to cool and headed back to the furnace, we'll let you know about this luster finish thing. Oh, so Todd's got the pipe cooler back in operation, and Foster's just going to cool the pipe a little bit before he gathers. After this gather, he's going to come over here to the Marver, and he's going to pick up this gold frit. And this is what's going to give him the luster finish. This is a reducing color. Reduction is a state of how much oxygen is in the flame that we use. So when we have a reducing color by using an oxygen-starved flame, we get a chemical reaction from the glass, and it kind of changes its appearance, gives it a lustrous shade. So Foster will gather up some more glass. Well, hello, Joanna. All right, so the UK is officially in the lead. We got Joanna and Tommy and Steve. So welcome aboard, and thanks for joining us on your afternoon. So Foster's got the glass gathered up. We'll come on over here to the Marver, and we'll watch him tap the iron or the glass into the bowl. This is going to coat it in this gold color. And again, this is a reducing color, so it will undergo a chemical change when an oxygen-starved flame is put to it. Right now he's getting enough glass on it to coat it completely. And then the next step is for Todd to gather up a bit of clear glass. And that clear glass will be dropped on to this, but in a random pattern. And you notice Foster's not reheating or anything yet. He's just brought that fresh frit. I love alliteration. He's brought that fresh frit back to the bench. And what he'll do is drape it in a random pattern around the glass. This random pattern of clear will actually spread the gold luster around. It'll move it apart, and then it'll create little zones where when Foster blows out the full-size piece, the cobalt blue from the interior will be exposed. So if he wanted a lot of cobalt blue showing, he wouldn't put a bunch of gold on it, and he would probably use a lot more clear. So it's going to be a really delicate design with the lines that you saw of clear glass will expose the blue underneath. So you got to heat it all up again. And you also might recall that he sat at the bench immediately after putting the gold frit on. So that meant that the glass got even a little colder. So it takes a couple minutes to reheat. He'll come back with the block again, and you'll notice that the gold appears to have left the building. Okay? But unlike Elvis, it's really still there. Okay? What'll happen is, when Elvis left the building, that was it. He's going to blow into that now, trap the air. We'll watch the bubble expand as he goes back to the glory hole. So with the color like this gold, when it gets heated, it almost goes transparent. There are a few other colors that do the same type of thing. So that's why you didn't really see the gold sitting on the surface. As he works the piece and as the heat starts to dissipate in different regions, you'll see the gold more prominently. He's coming back to shape it on the marver again, and by rolling the tip of the glass on the marver, he cools that zone. He's cooling that for a reason. He doesn't want it to blow out there. When he blows now, the expansion primarily takes place in the upper reaches of the vessel, or the gather. Probably wouldn't call it a vessel at this point, but the reason for the cooling is he wanted the expansion up in the top of the bubble toward the blowpipe. So we talk about the top and the bottom. The way that most of our vessels are made, the lower half to 2/3 of it comes first, then we transfer it to another iron and finish it up. So that's actually the bottom of the piece that he's rolling on the marver now, cooling it off a great deal, and then he'll blow. Well, actually, he's probably going to cut a jack line right now, and that's the metal blades he has there. But by cooling that extremely before he cut the jack line, he'll still be able to blow that out some now. And this time, instead of capping the pipe, he's just blowing straight into it. Notice he's holding the glass iron on a horizontal. When the glass blower holds the iron horizontal, they get more of a sphere. If you point it downward and blow, the glass elongates because gravity's pulling on it. And if he wanted to pretend he was one of the Tommy Dorsey's trombone players and held it up in the air, the glass would just get shorter. By pointing it down like that, it elongates some. He'll now use wet newspaper, actual newsprint. This chills the bottom just like the marver did, but not to the same degree. And once again, he'll blow, bring it to horizontal. Most vessels are made by creating a sphere with a jack line in it. The jack line is that compression he made with the jacks up near the blowpipe. That's also the point where the piece will separate from the blowing iron later on, because who wants a vase with a 4.5-foot piece of steel attached? Now by heating it up and using a little gentle swinging, he can elongate it. Notice he's going a little slow at first. That's not because of his advanced age. That's because he's watching the glass to get it elongate to just the point that he wants. And he's got there, okay? So by taking it easy instead of getting all aggressive, he's managed to get a length that he's happy with. If he wants a little more, he'll go back for another reheat and apply the same principle. It's a combination of heat, gravity, and centrifugal force. Notice he picked up the speed a little bit that time. He's getting it longer. He made it happen a lot faster. Now when he blows, the inflation is down toward the bottom. He kept a reservoir of hot glass down there. And he's checking with calipers right there to check his length on the piece. And he's going to reinforce the jack line right now. When it breaks free of the blowpipe, the glass is going to come loose at its weakest point. And we want to make sure that the weakest point is right there at that neckline or jack line. Because if it's equally weak at the jack line and at the attachment to the other iron, we get a floor model. And we don't like those. So he's working this a little more. He wants a little more length. He had checked it with the calipers. He'll come back and probably check that once more. A little bit of air. Anytime you lengthen the piece, you lose diameter. So that's why he had to blow it back out a little bit. The glass had to go somewhere. So he's going to shape the body side a little bit. These are paper pegs. They're actually cardboard tubes that attach to the metal, just like the jack handle, but instead of using the metal, which steals a lot of heat and can mark the glass, Foster's found that these cardboard tubes do a really nice job. And okay, so it looks like we're going to get a foot on this, okay? So that's why we didn't flatten the piece, okay? So Todd is flashing the piece right now. He's going to just occasionally put it into the glory hole and heat it up a little bit, and that will keep warmth in it. That glass has to stay over 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit or it could crack. But now that Foster's gathered up the glass for the foot, Todd will take one final flash and go over in front of the bench and point the glass toward the ceiling. Foster, in the meantime, is using a bit of a jack line to help the glass flow off the blowing iron. Then he'll pick it up and drop it onto the bottom of the vase. Remember, this vase is upside down right now. He'll put that in place, snip it free, and when he sits down, Todd presents it to him at the bench. He's keeping it turning. And now he'll use footboards to pat it toward the body and then create the foot by squeezing that glass between two pieces of wood. Those flattened boards have notches in them, and he catches the glass in that, and that's what allows him to get the foot, that nice profile with the thin edge. So I know that Steve and Tommy joined us from the Woodworkers Corps, so the footboards are simply two pieces of cherry wood, one of them a little less wide than the other, and it has notches in it. One blade forces the bottom flat, the other one allows us to put taper in. Now Foster's going to use his jack blades to straighten it out. And now he's got a real neat tool here. It's a piece of carbide on a handle, and it has a gentle taper to it. See how he's getting a nice slope to that foot? That's because of the shape of the carbide that's down on that handle. He flattens it to make sure it'll sit straight on the table, and then it'll be off for a punty. He'll hand it off to Todd again, and now comes another iron with a little bit of glass, but not nearly as much as before. Again, Todd flashes the piece to keep the temperature above 1,000 degrees. If he got up in the 1,600 range or so, it might start to deform a little bit, so he's very careful about the heat. Foster forms the glass on the end of this iron so that there's just a little bit sticking off the end of the pipe. He doesn't want a lot out there, or it would wiggle around when he attaches it. The goal here is to attach it to the foot and then break the piece free of the blowing iron. He dips his file in water. He'll be using the water later, and a little air on it helps cool it. Now he makes his connection, and as he turns all the irons and the glass, he keeps his eye on the pipe to make sure it's centered, and a little vibration, and it comes right off. And there we go with another successful transfer. Now it's into the heat with that. You can see that it's dancing around a little bit. That's because the putty is very hot. Foster's dancing a little bit too. With a little encouragement, folks, he might even do the moonwalk. Or not. Okay. So what he's doing now is he's primarily heating the upper reaches of the vessel, the top of the vessel, which is as yet unfinished. So So the lower, like I said, lower half to 2/3 is done, and it's got a foot on it. So he needs to concentrate the heat on the upper part, the top of the vessel, until he gets its shape completed. So you'll see that he has the piece only partly in the glory hole to heat that region. And every once in a while, he'll shove the whole thing in there to give it a flash heat. Flash heat is just a momentary exposure to the heat to keep it warm. Once he gets that glass malleable again, he'll bring it back to the bench and begin working it. Yeah, Steve, I've worked a little bit with cherry myself, and it does have a really sweet smell. I like working with that wood. Foster's going to use a pair of shears right now to cut the lip of the vessel where it was a little bit thick. Okay, and the glass, when it's hot, will cut just like that. Starts to cool a little bit, and it's hard to get the shears through it. He's just rounding the mouth out a little bit. He keeps his eye on the whole thing. So one of the skills that a glass blower has to develop is the ability to expand their focus and then contract it or zero in. So if we got tunnel vision and just looked at the one little part that we happen to be working on at the moment, and the rest of it kind of started to go wonky, we'd have trouble. So you can't just stare at that one place you're working. You got to pay attention to everything you got there. For beginning glass blowers or those earlier in their career, that's usually the cause of a piece getting too cold and cracking, is so much concentration. Now, just like he elongated it before when it was on the blowing iron, you saw him just elongate the neck there a little bit. He's using the back of the jacks or the hinge to make sure that the lip stays flat, and now he widens this out and opens it to the point he wants. You can see the heat beginning to dissipate because there's less glow. And down toward the bottom, it's looking very dark. So that glass down there is the coldest on this base. That toward the top is the hottest. So in a few moments, I had mentioned earlier that we were going to use an oxygen-starved flame. And that's actually what we have over there with that propane torch. There's no extra air source to that, so that propane torch is what would be called a reducing flame, or it's looking for more oxygen if we'd really like to bump up the heat. He's going to use the paper pegs now just to round it out a little bit, alter the shape without scarring it or stealing too much heat. When he's satisfied with the shape of the vase, he's going to take it over to the torch, and they'll torch it, and we'll see the luster appear. So there they go. Todd will light the torch.
Back off the pressure a bit. I guess don't burn it as well.
Alright, and there's the luster finish on the glass. You can see the blue peeking through where the gold is not covering it. And the gold has reduced and gives us that nice luster finish. Once this piece is annealed, you'll be able to fully see the colors with the blue coming through those clear trails. After a quick reheat, just to make sure that the temperature is even throughout, Foster will use a butter knife to chip around the punty. He's not trying to break it off there. It would fall on the floor. He's going to cool that spot so that when it's hit with a little wooden handle, it'll drop right off the pipe. So Todd will hold the pipe, Foster will take the glove and the hammer handle, catch the glass as it comes free from the pipe, and into the annealer it goes. There's our finished piece. And now for the longest part of the glass blowing process, the annealing. It's going into a box of bricks that's held at 900 degrees all day. The glass can go to that temperature with no ill effect, but if it were to crash from 900 degrees to room temperature too quickly, it would shatter. So when we turn that off at the end of the day, that's how we control the heat loss overnight, and the piece will come out tomorrow morning. So with that, we've finished the piece, and would like to have you join us on Facebook in, fewer minutes than I think we really want, but we're going to switch cameras here, and on our Facebook page, we'll do a Facebook Live presentation. So join us back at the Art of Fire. So long.